Hello, one and all. I'm here to speak with you about the amazing male-female dynamic currently evolving on our planet. We live in interesting times. We have been approaching the Aquarian age and fusing with it. And Aquarius rules androgyny, equality between the sexes, a mutual respect for our strengths and qualities, and an evolutionary way of being as one with both of these qualities, so that every man and every woman holds both male and female dynamics and qualities within them. And each one can choose to express the qualities of male or female at any given moment. Aquarian energy is adaptable, flexible, moving with the times, futuristic, so that in order to survive and move forward with more ease, we all need to embody both the qualities. And we can essentially associate them with the right brain and left brain. Right brain qualities are traditionally associated with the feminine, which would be relational, intuitive, feminine connection with others, nurturing, supporting, caring, creative in a fertile kind of way. And then the male qualities associated with our left brains, analytical, thinking, judging, logical, creative, in a more intellectual sort of way. So surely we can recognize that many women associate with the male qualities, and that's also the quality of initiative and action, with the elements of air and fire, proactivity, working with the external world, expressing the energy out into the world. This is the Yang way, the Yang associated with the Asian system, or in Ayurvedic with the fire energies, the Shiva embodiment. And then the feminine associated with the Yin in the Asian, in Ayurvedic system, the receptivity of water, of allowing things to reflect within you, reflective feeling qualities that magnetically attract energies in the Yin way. So because we can all embody these, it's not about embracing your masculinity or stepping up to it or stepping up and embodying your goddess energies. No, it's about the divine merging of both, the energies becoming one in a synergy, in a dance of life, in an alchemy of water and fire, or earth and air, where everyone can come together as one within themselves. That essentially, for the male-female dynamic to work well in harmony, we need to first and foremost balance these energies within us. In classic Jungian psychology, there is the inner anima and the animus, the feminine and masculine qualities. And on the path of self-integration and actualization that the great psychologist Jung discusses, it's about marrying those within you, making vows to yourself, becoming your own beloved, and marrying the qualities within yourself. It is only when we can get these qualities balanced and dynamic within ourselves that we can receive an external mirror of that in a beloved partner. As long as we have imbalance within, we are going to experience imbalances in our relationships externally. So it is important to get this balance between the external and the internal as well. Internal is more feminine, to go in and be in the yin space. Externalizing everything is more masculine. Our planet has largely operated with the masculine energies over the centuries in predominance, and this has enabled this externalization of everything, where we project outwards, we express outwards, we try to achieve outwards, tick the box outside of ourselves. And this has led to a suppression or belittlement of the feminine energies that are darker, closed within the self, more introverted, behind the scenes, working organically. And so when we talk about goddess energies, it's not to say, oh, women are better and we need to come into the female power better than ever. And a lot of people are poo-pooing that and critiquing that right now. No, you got it wrong. That's not what it's about. It's about that all of us have to own our feminine energies, men and women alike, that we all need to be in touch with that surrendering to something deeper, something more mysterious, something more organic within our subconscious selves, that we've all got to dive in and face our fears about that and embrace our deeper humanity. And both men and women need to do this equally. And it's not at the exclusion of our male energies. It's not at the exclusion or the critique of the male. No, it's in harmony, in concert, in fusing together. We can talk about this historically, and we can talk about it in terms of sexuality to explore this male-female dynamic more. So sexually, we all have an urge to merge. That's why we have this sex drive. We want to merge with the other. This is spiritual, to become one, to feel this fusion of energies. It's magnetic, it's electric. It drives us on this planet. But it's a spiritual act. The reason we feel this is, of course, that we can reduce it to biology, but it is also spiritual equally, that we're desiring this merging feeling for procreation, yes, but also for co-creativity and evolution on the planet. So when we feel attraction and desire, it's not that all women are attracted to men and men to women. No, we know right now on the planet we're in interesting times where gender identification is very fluid. So there is gender fluidity very prominent right now. And you see it especially in the rising generations. I'm in my 50s, so I'm not in that language so readily that's in the LGBTQ community. And there's so many different ways that this community identifies themselves. It could be pan or binary, non-binary, femboys, so many terms that I'm not completely well versed in or familiar. So please forgive me if you're part of that community and I say something offensive. I don't mean to be. I consider myself a non-judgmental, open-minded person, open-hearted, and I do want to hold all people of all types in that space. So forgive me if I make a blunder or a faux pas here about that. I have a 12-year-old daughter. She's critiquing me all the time. She identifies more as a boy right now, even though she was born a girl. So she wants to be called a he, which I'm trying to convert over to, and respect and support her in her journey, exploration and discovery. So it's an interesting time, and at least half her class has declared themselves bisexual or some other gender identification other than the sex they were born into. So it definitely is a new frame of reference where there is not the same demarcation that older generations had around gender identification. that there is a blurring of the lines, and also a shifting from time to time, that you might not stay the same gender identification your whole life. Maybe yes, maybe no, you might shift along the way. So it's interesting to observe in these times. It's also interesting to look at this matter in terms of astrology. If we go back billions of years, our planet was born in the constellation of Gemini, and hence came the word Genesis from the Bible, meaning that we were born into a constellation representative of variety, the variety of life, the plethora of flora and fauna that then burgeoned on this planet. Represents that, and that there was this fluidity and variety once upon a time. Then by 5,000 years ago, 3000 BC, in the time of the Egyptians, and what we observe in stone circles in the Celtic part of the world, there were a predominance of matriarchal societies, where the female energy was dominant on the planet. So you had fertility rites, the stone circle represented the womb, the phallic stones would be nearby, along singular stone representing destiny. But really these were all about fertility celebrations and honoring of the co-creation between the masculine and the feminine principles on this planet, and the creativity to propagate and expand and burgeon on this planet. So we see this symbolism so strong, and we operated in matriarchal, archetypal ways of being all the way up until the time of Christ, interestingly. And if we look at mythology, a lot of the goddesses, Isis, for example, and in Babylonian times, Ishtar, they were vicious, they were judgmental, they were vengeful goddesses. There was not this idea of being the peaceful goddess. So they were power hungry also. And so it's not that we would want to return to these matriarchal ways of being or go back to ancient Egyptian times or Celtic times, though, you know, male and female may have respected each other. They were not necessarily in peaceful union and collaboration. And there was not a sense of androgyny at that time, largely. When we came to the time of Christ, we moved from the constellation of Taurus, which is very Venusian, and the divine feminine earthy Gaia energies of creation. We moved into the constellation of Aries, actually the Roman Empire. So this energy from the Roman and Greek empires that brought forward the male energies of domination, aggression, going out on the conquest, imperialism that followed as nations then went forward to take over the world and be the dominant powers. Well, we still see much of this prevalent on the planet, but it began in the Roman Empire times, and we stayed in that Aryan race, which was male dominant. Aries is ruled by Mars, or Aries rules Mars, and this is the classic yang, fiery, assertive energies. So they prevailed on this planet for a good long time until we came to the time of Christ. And then we moved into the constellation of Pisces. And hence in the Christian world, you see the symbol of the fish, which came from the fact that we were in the constellation of Pisces. And the qualities of Pisces match Christ consciousness, being the last sign of the zodiac as we know it in the Western world. It is symbolic of oneness with the divine, with God, if you like. This sense of spiritual merging with all that is, that the oneness is holy, the wholeness is holy. And so Christ brought in the energy of compassion, which is a very Piscean energy, compassion for everyone. It also represents sacrifice. And of course, Christ on the cross was the great sacrifice, symbolically on behalf of humankind. But this energy of compassion was new on the planet because previously in matriarchal societies under the Taurian constellation that we were in, and then later the Aryan constellation, which was very aggressive and Mars-like, we did not know compassion. We need to consider Asian culture, for example, had Kuan Yin, the goddess of compassion. It goes back centuries as well. But the Asian world is a different one from the Western paradigm that predominates on the planet in terms of superpowers right now. So I do admit I'm largely working with the Western paradigm. The Asian paradigm may have been ahead of us in some ways. If we look at their cultural history and wisdom. And that's why many of us in the West turn to Asian philosophy, Buddhism, and the wisdom of Qigong and so on in current times, because there is a rich historical precedence there. And in terms of male-female dynamics as well. But here I'm speaking of the male-female dynamic in the Western philosophy and mentality and energetics, largely. So to continue on, so in the Piscean realm, yes, we came into this energy of compassion for everyone, of every background, rich, poor, whatever ethnicity, whatever state of being. Of course, that didn't exclude prejudice on the planet and bigotry and so on, but there at least was a wave of this to come into more unconditional love. And what we see is an interesting opposition, though. Also, if we look at astrologically, that Virgo is opposite Pisces, and Virgo is an earthy energy of control, and Pisces is the energy of submission and humbleness, humility, which largely became a part of Christian philosophy and religion. But the Virgo energy was playing out on the planet too. So what we then saw play out in the dynamics between men and women was a dynamic of subjugation and domination and control that has been prevalent on the planet since the time of Christ, nearly up to the present, up to this cusp of the Aquarian age. And this domination subjugation dynamic has been played out by both men and women. I mean, we can critique the male dominant culture that came from the Aryan age while we sat in the constellation of Aries, that was domination. But even the matriarchal world before that was domination by the feminine. So the Piscean area, the Christ consciousness brought in a more humility and, to sacrifice oneself or give oneself over was considered more holy than to receive. But this also put all energies in submission and easily controlled. So the control dynamic was taken on by both men and women, that men felt they had to control women to keep them in their place and not to be overpowered by the women and their talents and strengths. And likewise, the women would, in their subtle way, be controlling the men. to train them up or get them to submit to their will. So we were both controlling each other, these energies trying to control each other over the last several centuries. So it's not to point the finger just at the men doing all the dominating and controlling. No, women have also manipulated and done it in subtle ways. And there's been this battle of the sexes. And, you know, books like Men Are From Mars, Women From Venus, and everything kind of polarized in opposition. And even within ourselves, these inner battles with these qualities within ourselves, and what roles do we take and how do we behave, and you know, this war on the planet between the sexes. So hopefully we're coming to a time with more consciousness where we're evolving that. It's interesting because I used to, in my university days, nearly have a minor in anthropology. I love the subject, very interesting. The study of humans and their evolution and gender and so on. And there's one very impressive book that I read in those days called The Chalice and the Blade, Our History and Our Future, by, let me just take a note here. It's Rianne Eisler. So you might look that up. She's put out a new edition. I was back in university getting my master's degree. I'm back in the early 90s, my bachelor's in the late 80s, when that book was around. But there's a new edition now, and she's elaborated and related it to current times, which is fantastic, made it more relevant. And it's a fascinating book because it's looking at the anthropological perspective, sociology, psychology, economics, politics, and so on in terms of gender and our evolution with that, going all the way back historically to hunter-gatherer times, where, you know, our roles were defined in terms of our occupation as women as gatherers and men as hunters. But it also is an interesting exploration because it showed that men were also nurturers. There was the men who stayed back in the village, supporting the women and children, keeping them safe, being protective, also playing a nurturing, fathering role, different from the hunters going out like wild man out there hunting. And likewise, some of the women were more strong and sturdy and protecting and building and doing more hard work, and not just doing the nurturing childcare, for example. And she goes into the complexities of all of that and the dynamics that evolve there. So very interesting read indeed, relevant for our times. Also recommend more currently a psychotherapist, Catherine Woodward Thomas, who wrote Conscious Uncoupling, that was made famous by Gwyneth Paltrow in her breakup from Chris Reed. But the psychotherapist preceded that story, that celebrity story. She wrote the book, a fantastic book, a nice, good, short read, very clear, very well researched about marriage on the planet and how marriage originated in the 14th century and was largely an economic arrangement, of course, as many marriages are around the planet, economic number one, and not for love at all. The romanticization of marriage only came because life was so hard in the Middle Ages and so dreary, and most people died by the time they were 40. So you might only go into a marriage for a decade or two at most, and that was to just save your ass from being poor on the street. And we romanticized it because it made it more palatable. It made it that hard life more beautiful to romanticize it. But it was not necessarily based on love. And we know arranged marriages all over the planet aren't based on love. So when we try to go into this construct of marriage, for example, with men and women on the planet in this binding contract. It's not necessarily natural. And the truth is, it doesn't work for a lot of people. For most people, there's 60% divorce rate in the Western world. And that doesn't even account for the people who stay in the marriages who aren't happy, but never get divorced. So the percentage that are happy, who knows, that could be, 20%, 30% at most. But the point is that we need to evolve new ways forward in the dynamics between the male-female energies, whether they're embodied in a woman, a man, a bisexual arrangement, a same-sex arrangement. We live in a modern world. There's no stereotyping or typecasting here of what that's going to look like or how we should navigate it. But Catherine Woodward Thomas, for one, shows new ways of evolving it with emotional freedom so that we learn to move through these times and love changes form. That if we bind it to the same rigid structure all the time, we'll never survive. That we might change relationships, significant love relationships, up to 3 times in our lifetime, because we're evolving and changing all the time. And we live in a very dynamic time. And one of the keys to evolution right now is to stay adaptable and flexible. Those are characteristics of the Aquarian age. Flexibility, adaptability. Aquarius rules the ankles, and to move with ease, you need flexible ankles. You need to move freely and agilely on this planet in these bodies. So we need to consider, for the male-female dynamic to work well, we need to stay flexible and agile from our right side, which is our male side of our body, with our left side, our feminine side of the body, and get these to work in a balanced, agile way, a flexible and adaptable way for survival and to thrive and co-create as well. And another point in the male-female dynamic is how these energies can best work together is not in war and battle with each other, not in competition, but in partnership. And Rianne Eisler, in her Chalice and the Blade book, discusses this too, that this idea that we have to be in competition on this planet to make progress is a falsehood. And if you really research the anthropology and the origins of humanity, it's partnership and cooperation that's going to take us further. And we're at that stage now that we better get it together and cooperate, respect each other, honor each other, play together more, co-create more, enjoy this journey together more, both within ourselves. As we get the balance right within, we're going to get that mirrored back to us externally to get a balanced energetic in all our relationships. Whatever form you choose to engage in relationship is not the point. It's not the external form, it's internally what's happening in this inner dynamic, how you bring it to life and enjoy it. That let's have fun with this. Let's not make it a battle and a struggle and a fight together. We're going to achieve more amazing, beautiful creativity by letting the water and the fire play together. Let the light dance in the water, illuminate it, create photosynthesis in it, rainbows and alchemy is the way. So hey, give it a go, play, 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 enjoy, make vows to yourself, make your inner marriage, let all these energies come together and see what happens. Watch the magic come alive and witness how these beautiful energies get married back to you. I personally am in the best relationship of my life, and relationships just get richer and better because I stopped pointing the finger out there, blaming the men out there or the women, and owning my stuff and getting it all together inside, and honoring that outside, and holding more unconditional love and acceptance for all the qualities outside. You know, we can also talk about the biology of men and women, which is distinctly different, no matter what you claim yourself to be, or energetically, or personality, or emotionally express or don't express. Biologically, there are basic qualities. Male put it out, women take it in, it's obvious. We all have the same stuff. As a child, I said, what's the big deal? We all have the same stuff. Why do we make this such a big issue? But we all have the same stuff, but yet it is biologically different for men and women. We do need to acknowledge that and accept those differences is another step in all of this male-female dynamic. And accept that, yeah, male want to spread their seeds all over the world if they can, and women only want one seed. So that is a fundamental difference. And so we can intellectually or psychologically, philosophically argue otherwise. There is an intrinsic, primal, reptilian kind of drive there that is distinct. So we need to be understanding, accepting, make peace with each other. How are we going to be evolutionary in our relationships and evolve this forward? We got to find new ways that where there's more love and acceptance. I mean, maybe, you know, people are exploring polyamory and all sorts of things. If you observe a lot of cases, that doesn't work very well for a lot of people. It ends up in human dramas, crimes of passion, whatever. But if we open up this dialogue and are honest, we have to be dead honest with ourselves, dead honest with each other, have the frank discussions. How can we evolve this in new ways? Can we do it with love? Can we, say, explore partnership that's more fluid, and maybe it includes one or two others, or maybe not. But everything has to be with love and unconditional acceptance and 100% honest communication, and not trying to suppress, control, deny and lie, and be unreal and try to conform to old rigid structures and societal expectations that really don't work in our current world, that are no longer applicable. It was fine when you're in the one village and you just have the one person you're attracted to because the village is so small, and that's it. And therefore you tie the knot, do the hand fasting, whatever, and there you are for the rest of your short life. But in today's world, where we live longer and longer, and we can move about more readily, and we live more dynamic lives, and we have more consciousness in self-discovery and exploration and evolving ourselves, then naturally we're going to have changes, and we're going to need different mirrors at different times coming back at us in relationships. And the only way that a male-female dynamic can continue in the evolution is if they share the same vision, and they're being very creative together, and they keep inspiring each other and sparking this motivation to keep going deeper or farther or higher in the journey. But if the inspiration stops and one person's evolving and the other one's saying, no, I'm going to hold on to this rigid shore, while the other one's floating down the currents of life, the river of life, that can't work. And it doesn't mean you didn't love each other. It doesn't mean you didn't do your best. It doesn't mean that there wasn't love. It just means that you need different things at that time, and you can have a whole new chapter of life. Love is infinite and can be embodied in all different forms and changing forms, and we can't be rigid about it. We need to stay flexible, versatile, dynamic in these times. Keep flowing with the river of life. Keep plunging into the ocean of emotion and human connection, and see where it takes us. We're evolving this together. Let's open up and try it. I mean, if you have to do a marriage contract or something, How about 10-year contract? Come on, you lawyers and solicitors and policymakers. Let's get real with the times. A 10-year contract would be perfect. You can have your babies during that 10 years, keep them safe, have a tax shelter, whatever. But maybe after 10 years, it's not quite your fit anymore. You can easily dissolve it or renew it if you so desire. Maybe you're going to renew it forever. Wonderful, fantastic, and bravo for those who do. And those who don't, it's not a failure. It's not the end of the world. If there's more acceptance and dynamic, we don't have to have stigmas about these things and fall apart over them and create dramas over them. There's new ways forward. So I'm encouraging all of you that the male-female dynamic is in a fluid state right now within us and externally. And we need to stay dynamic with it in ourselves and as we actualize it in our external world. And it's not a static thing that, okay, let's understand it and that's it. No, we'll keep learning about it as we evolve. So open your eyes, open your heart, open your consciousness, and see what happens in this mysterious dance between the male, female, the Shiva and the Shakti, the yin and the yang, and let them come into balance, harmony, and evolution. Thank you for listening. All the best.